Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 2. September 28th, 1927. How there can be no imperfections in the divine will, and one must enter into it completely naked. One who does not do the divine will destroys the divine life within himself, and this is a crime that deserves no pity. How the divine will alone is rest. Scourges. I was feeling all abandoned in the supreme Fiat, but in the midst of the perfection of a will so holy, I felt imperfect, bad. And I thought to myself, how can it be that my beloved Jesus tells me that he makes me live inside his divine volition, and yet I feel I am so bad? And my adored Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, in my divine will, there can be neither imperfections nor badness. My will has the purifying virtue, and destroyer of all evils. Its light purifies. Its fire destroys even the root of evil. Its sanctity sanctifies the soul, and embellishes her in a way that she must serve to make it happy, and to let it take all its delights with one who lives in it. Nor does it admit to live in my divine volition creatures who may bring imperfections and bitternesses within them. Those would be things against its nature, and therefore it could never admit them to live within itself. Rather, what you say are impressions of uglinesses, of imperfections, of badnesses, and my will uses them as footstool, or as earth that it keeps under its feet, and without even looking at them, it thinks about enjoying its little daughter, and placing on her lap its acts, its joys, its riches, to make her happy, so as to be able to enjoy from her happiness. My will gives what it has, and does not admit within itself things, even the slightest, that do not belong to it. Therefore, one who wants to live in it must enter into it completely naked, because the first thing that my volition does is to clothe the soul with light, embellish her with divine raiments, and impress on her forehead the kiss of perennial peace, of happiness, and of firmness. What is human has nothing to do within it. It has neither life nor a place, and the soul herself feels such disgust for what does not belong to my volition, that she would lay down her life rather than take part in what does not belong to the sanctity of my divine will. Then I continued my abandonment in the divine Fiat, and my sweet Jesus added, my daughter, my divine will was given from the very beginning of creation as life of the creatures, and it took on the commitment to maintain this life in them, whole, beautiful, in its full vigor, administering in each active creature a divine act of its own, an act of the height of its sanctity, of its light, of its power and beauty. it would place itself in waiting, waiting for their act in order to give its own, in such a way as to make in it a portent of divine life worthy of its power and wisdom. In order to comprehend this, it is enough to say that my divine volition was to form as many lives of itself in each creature, and therefore it would place the whole of its ability and the infinite qualities it possessed in the exercise of working. How beautiful these divine lives in the creatures would have been! In looking at them, we were to find in them our reflection, our image, the echo of our happiness. What joy, what feast creation would have been for us and for the creatures! Now you must know that one who does not do my divine will and does not live in it wants to destroy his own divine life within himself that he was to possess. To destroy one's own life. What crime! Who would not condemn one who wanted to destroy his own corporal life, or one who did not want to take food, reducing himself to being emaciated, infirm, incapable of anything? Now, one who does not do my will destroys his life that the divine goodness wants to give him. And one who does my will, but not always, and does not live in it, because he lacks continuous and sufficient food, is the poor ill one, without strength, emaciated, incapable of doing true good. And if it seems that he does something, it is without life, strained, because my will alone can give it life. What crime, my daughter? What crime that deserves no pity? My lovable Jesus showed himself very tired and as though restless, so great was his sorrow for so many lives destroyed in the creatures. I felt pain because of it, and I said to Jesus, "My love, tell me what troubles you. You suffer very much. The destruction of these divine lives of your adorable will is your greatest sorrow. Therefore I pray you, let its kingdom come, so that this, your sorrow, may turn into joy, and so creation will no longer give you restlessness and sorrow, but rest and happiness." And seeing that with my speaking I could not get to calming him, I called to my help all the acts of his will done in creation. And omitting my own, I surrounded Jesus with the acts of his will. An immense light formed around Jesus, and that light eclipsed all the evils of creatures, and he could take rest. Then he added, "My daughter, my will alone can give me rest. If you want to calm me when you see me restless, lend yourself to the carrying out of the life of my will in you, and as you make all its acts your own, I will find in you its light, its sanctity, its infinite joys, giving me rest. And I will take a little break from chastising the creatures, who, because of these divine lives that they destroy within themselves, so much deserve that I destroy all natural goods, and even their very lives. Don't you see how the sea goes out of its shore and advances to snatch these lives into its bosom and bury them in it? The wind, the earth, almost all elements advance to make a snatch at creatures and destroy them. These are the acts of my will spread in creation for love of them, that having not been received with love, convert into justice. I remained frightened in seeing this, and I prayed my highest good, Jesus, to placate himself, and to let the kingdom of the divine Fiat come soon. October 2nd, 1927. How Adam was the holiest one before he sinned. Fullness and totality of goods, of the acts done in the divine will. How they extend to all. The pupil of the eye invested by the sun. The creature in the divine will lends herself as matter and hides her creator. Example of the host. I was doing my round in the creation to follow all the acts of the divine will that are in it. And as I arrived at Eden, in which God created the first man, Adam, in order to unite myself with him to that unity of wills that he possessed with God, in which he did his first acts in his first period of creation, I thought to myself, who knows what sanctity my first father Adam possessed? What value his first acts done in the kingdom of the divine Fiat contained? And how can I impetrate a kingdom so holy upon earth again, as I am the only one occupied with obtaining a good so great? But while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, sending rays of light, and that light converted into words, and he told me, "My daughter, firstborn daughter of my will, I want to reveal to you, as daughter of my will, the sanctity of he who possessed the kingdom of my divine Fiat. At the beginning of creation, this kingdom had its life, its perfect dominion, and its complete triumph. So it is not completely foreign to the human family. And because it is not foreign, there is all the sure hope for it to return again into their midst, to reign and dominate. Now you must know that Adam possessed such sanctity when he was created by God, and his acts, even the slightest, had such value that no saint, either before or after my coming upon earth, can be compared to his sanctity. And all of their acts together do not reach the value of one single act of Adam, because in my divine will he possessed the fullness of sanctity, the totality of all the divine goods. And do you know what fullness means? It means to be filled to the brim, to the point of overflowing with light, sanctity, love, with all the divine qualities, in such a way as to be able to fill heaven and earth, over which he had dominion, and through which his kingdom extended. Therefore, Each one of his acts, done in this fullness of divine goods, had such value that no one else, as much as he might sacrifice himself, suffer, and do good, but does not possess the kingdom of my will and its total dominion, can be compared to one alone of these acts in the kingdom of my will. Therefore, the glory, the love that Adam gave me as long as he lived in the kingdom of my divine volition, no one has given me, because in his acts he gave me fullness and totality of all goods, and only in my will can these acts be found. Outside of it, they do not exist. Therefore, Adam had his riches, his acts of infinite value, that my eternal will communicated to him before the divinity, because in creating him, God had left nothing empty within him, but everything was divine fullness, as much as a creature could contain. And when he fell into sin, these acts, these riches of his, this glory and perfect love that he had given to his Creator, were not destroyed. On the contrary, it is by virtue of them and of his operating done in my divine fiat that he earned the redemption. No, one who had possessed the kingdom of my will, even for a short time, could not remain without redemption. One who possesses this kingdom enters into such bonds and rights with God that God himself feels with him the strength of his own chains that bind him, and he cannot get rid of him. Our adorable Majesty with Adam was in the same condition as a father who has a son who has been for him the cause of many conquests, of great riches, of incalculable glory. There is nothing the Father possesses in which he does not find the acts of his Son. He feels the glory and the love of his Son resound everywhere. Now, to his misfortune, this Son falls into poverty. Can the Father ever not have compassion for his Son, as he feels everywhere and in every place the love, the glory, the riches with which his Son has surrounded him? My daughter, by living in the kingdom of our will, Adam had penetrated into our boundaries that are interminable, and he had placed his acts, his glory, his love for his Creator everywhere. And as our child, with the acts he emitted, he brought us our riches, our joys, our glory, and love. His echo resounded in our whole being, as ours did in his. Now, in seeing him fallen into poverty, how could our love bear not having compassion on him, if our divine will itself lovingly waged war on us, and pleaded for he who had lived in it? Do you see, then, what living in my divine will means? Its great importance? In it there is fullness of all divine goods, and totality of all possible and imaginable acts. The soul embraces the whole of the divine being. She is in my will like the eye before the sun, that remains all filled with its light. And while the whole sun is reflected in the pupil of the eye, its light remains also outside of it, investing the whole person, and covering the earth without departing from within the pupil. And while its light remains in the eye, it would want to bring the pupil into the sun, to let it go round the earth with itself, to let it do what the light does, and receive its acts everywhere as attestation of love and glory. This is an image of the soul who lives in my will. My will fills her with such fullness as to leave no empty space within her. And since she is incapable of possessing the whole divine immensity, it fills her for as much as the creature can contain. And without separating from her, it remains outside of her, bringing the pupil of the will of the soul into the endlessness of its light, to let her do what my divine will does, and receive the requital of her acts and of her love. O power of my divine fiat operating in the creature, who, letting herself be invested by its light, does not refuse its dominion and its kingdom. And if Adam deserved compassion, it was because the first period of his life was in the kingdom of the divine will. If the celestial sovereign lady, though she was alone, was able to obtain the coming of the Word upon earth, it was because she gave free field to the kingdom of the divine fiat within herself. If my very humanity was able to form the kingdom of redemption, it was only because it possessed the whole entireness and immensity of the kingdom of the eternal volition. Because wherever it extends, it embraces everything. It can do anything, and there is no power against it that can constrain it. So, one alone who possesses the kingdom of my will is worth more than everything and every one, and can earn and impetrate what all others together can neither earn nor obtain. Because all others together, however good, but without the life of my will in them, are always the little flames, the little plants, the little flowers, that at the most serve to adorn the earth. They are subject to being extinguished and to wither, and the divine goodness can neither place great entrustments upon them, nor concede such portents as to do good to the entire world. On the other hand, one who lives in my will is more than sun, and just as the sun invests everyone with the empire of its light, it rules over the plants and gives life, color, fragrance, sweetness to each one of them. It imposes itself on everything with its tacit empire, to give it its effects and the goods it possesses. And no other sphere does so much good to the earth as the sun does. In the same way, those in whom my will lives are more than sun, and with the light that they contain, they lower themselves, and then rise with rapidity. They penetrate everywhere, into God, into his acts. With the divine will that they possess, they rule over God himself and over creatures. They are capable of overwhelming everything to hold out the life of the light they possess to all. They are the bearers of their Creator, and they let the light walk ahead of them to impetrate and obtain and give whatever they want. Oh, if creatures knew such a great good, they would compete among themselves, and all passions would change into passion of light for living only and always in that divine fiat that sanctifies everything, gives everything, and rules everything. My poor mind continued to wander in the divine volition, and it marveled at the sublimeness, fullness, and totality of the acts done in it. And my beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, added, "My daughter, let your marvel cease. The living in my divine fiat is to operate in it. It is the transfusion of the Creator into the creature. And there is an infinite distance between the divine operating and the operating of the creature alone. She lends herself to her God as matter, to let him operate great things, just as the matter of light lent itself to the divine fiat in creation, to let it form the sun, the heavens, the stars, the sea, all matters in which the supreme fiat resounded, and it manufactured the whole creation. A prodigy of it is the sun, the heavens, the sea, the earth, that were vivified and animated by the fiat. Perennial and enchanting display of what my will knows how to do and can do. It happens with the soul, as with the accidents of the host, that though being matter, lends itself to let itself be animated by my sacramental life, as long as those same words spoken by me in instituting the most holy sacrament are pronounced by the priest. Those were words animated by my fiat, that contained the creative power, and this is why the matter of the host undergoes the transubstantiation of the divine life. One can pronounce as many words as one wants over the host, but if they are not those few words established by the fiat, my life remains in heaven, and the host remains the wretched matter that it is. So it happens with the soul. She can do, say, suffer what she wants, but if my divine fiat does not run inside of them, those are always finite and wretched things. On the other hand, for one who lives in it, her words, her works, her pains, are like veils that hide the Creator, and he who created heaven and earth makes use of these veils and makes of them works worthy of himself, placing in them his sanctity, his creative power, his infinite love. Therefore, no one else, though he might do great things, can compare to that creature in whom my divine will lives, reigns, and dominates. Among creatures also it happens that according to the material they have in their hands with which to form their works, so does the value that they possess and acquire vary. Suppose that someone has properties of iron. How much he has to work, sweat, and toil to render that iron soft, to give it the shape of the container he wants to make. And the earning he makes is so small that he can barely make a living. On the other hand, someone else has properties of gold, of precious stones. This one works, oh, how much less, but he earns millions. So it is not the work that brings great earning, exuberant riches, but the value of the material that one possesses. Someone works little and earns much, because the material he possesses contains great value. Someone else works much, but because the material he possesses is wretched and of very little value, is always the poor ragged one, and his stomach half empty. So it happens to one who possesses my divine will. He possesses the life, the creative virtue, and his littlest acts contain a divine and immeasurable value. Therefore, no one can equal his riches. On the other hand, one who does not possess my will as his own life is without life, and he works with the material of his own will, and therefore he is always the poor ragged one before God, and he is empty of that food that forms in him the Fiat voluntas tua, on earth as it is in heaven. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 2. Fiat.